Shadow Priest is kind of cool now, as you've probably heard. These are the talents you'd be using if you're trying to do extremely well in Raid, but this poses a big problem. Do you see it? Look at all these awesome PvP talents that you wouldn't have. Blackout up here at the top. You can't fear that often. People are allowed to talk to you as much as they want, and you cannot steal their health from them. Also, your arms are shorter than ideally they would be, and Mind Flay's not talented. What's going on? Let's talk about how Shadow Priests are doing some weird stuff and how they're all basically using the same runes for PvP and PvE. Except for this one, Void Plague. You have a couple options for that slot. You could get Twisted Faith instead, which some people do, but not everybody. In fact, even the top 5 priests, it's a split decision. About half of them are using Void Plague all the time, and half of them are using Twisted Faith almost all the time. But nobody is varying from using any of the other 4 runes. That would be Homunculi in the legs, because why would you get Shared Pain when there's very few fights where you'd even increase your parse from hitting an extra thing? Most of these fights only have one valid target. And as far as this slot for your feet, of course you want Dispersion. You could take Pain Suppression instead, but as far as the value to yourself, it's basically the same thing, except during Dispersion you're going to gain mana. So of course you're going to grab that. Mind Spike's your filler DPS move. Remember before we said how you're no longer taking Mind Flay. So now we got Mind Spike. We absolutely need this. There's nothing else you could have even decided on taking if you wanted to do damage. And then for Shadow Word Death, same deal here. Some people are worried that Penance is going to be the new move in a little bit for DPS, but we'll see. I don't think that's really going to happen. The worst thing right now about playing Shadow Priest, though, like I mentioned before, is how there's all these talents that you're going to be giving up so that way you can do more DPS when you're in raid, but let's not worry too much about that. Let's start checking out what the top priests are actually up to themselves. So I want to see these top guys. We're going to be checking all of them from number 1 to number 5 and seeing what's going on in their raid groups and how are they doing excellent damage. So starting off with the number 1 guy, we'll see his group looks a little sus. Why are there 3 priests? This has me a little worried. Are they doing something with power infusion? If you played in TBC, you probably remember that all the top casters got power infusion like 5 times back to back, and it created a really toxic lane meta. I was worried that for casters, this would be a really popular issue in SOD also, but you'd be happy to find out that it's really not. This is the buff log for the guy who has the number 1 parse as a Shadow Priest. And if you go check his infusions he caught, you can see he only got 7 of them. And there's 6 fights. So he got 1 on the first 5 guys. And then for the very last boss, you can see 3 minutes apart, he caught 2 of them. Yeah, you got to remember that Power Infusion is a 3-minute CD, which is part of the reason why these guys are catching it once a fight. Obviously, the other part is because they're not trying to cheese the fight. So no, you don't need to have your team carrier if you want to get incredible parses on a Shadow Priest. Let's see, what kind of rotations are these guys doing though? I'm going to check out Viscous Fallout. Let's check this Rev by the way guy first, and then we'll check out a few other people's rotations. You're going to notice there's a bit of a chicken and the egg problem here when it comes to playing Shadow Priest, and that's because look at these moves. They pretty much all impact each other. So you have Mind Spike. What's cool about Mind Spike? Well, let's read this. It makes your Mind Blast do more damage. Okay, so maybe you want to use this first, but Mind Blast has a CD. So maybe we actually want to use this first and get it on CD. But Shadow Word Death hits super duper hard. So maybe we want to use that first. And the dots, I mean, come on. Like, the sooner you get them up, the more they tick. So this creates a real issue of what order should you do the abilities in. And if you check all of these priests and try to check out what they're doing so you can come up with the ideal rotation, you're going to see that they're all hitting it in a different order, which at first might worry you because it means, what is the optimal rotation? What should I be doing? But this is actually awesome because if the best guys are all doing different crap, it just means it doesn't matter, all right? Here's another thing that shows how what you pick doesn't matter a whole lot. It's mostly about just hitting the buttons and not standing in fire. Check this guy. All right, this guy isn't using Void Plague at all. He's number 2. This guy is using Void Plague, and he's using it like on all the fights. How can we tell? Well, it's got a big number here, and then also watch me right here. I'm going to turn off Void Plague. You see how that went gray? Look, yeah, all those like bumps going up and down. That means he's using Void Plague on all the fights. The third guy is not switching. He always uses them. But there are some people that are not using Void Plague all that much. I mean, look at this, 5%. Why? He must be only using it on one fight. Let's check that out. So yet again, go over here, hit Void Plague, boop, boop. Wait, is that the only one that's moving? Let's zoom. Oh yeah, it is. What fight is this? The second to last one? That's the Menagerie. So he wants it so he can multi-dot. Cool. What about the final guy? What's he doing? Ooh, same deal. Very low percentage on Void Plague, so this must only be so that way he can multi-dot on the last guy. Let's see, go to Void Plague, turn it on and off. Yep, it's only making this one go up and down. Cool, so now you can see these guys all kind of have different priorities on how they use the moves. Of course, we didn't check the event log, which is how I did this before, so we can do that really quick. We'll check the event log on a couple guys, just so that way you don't need to worry about me making some crap up or something. Look at this. Notice how that's different. It's going like dot Mind Blast, Shadow Word Death into Mind Spike. Remember before we were saying like, oh, maybe you want to Mind Spike first because it makes your what you call it, Mind Blast hit harder. Well, it's not so simple, right? This guy's doing it one way. The number 1 guy is doing it a different way. Let's check the number 4 guy. I'm not positive if he's doing it a different way, but I really wouldn't be surprised. Let's see. We go to events, casts again. Yeah, we're on casts. Go down here. Mind Spike, Shadow Word Pain, Homunculi. Okay, yeah, different than this one. Different than this one. Yeah, look, this guy, his 4th cast is Shadow Word Pain. This other one, it's his first. It's a mess. It's a mess. The reason this guy's probably doing this Shadow Word Pain first, though, if I had to guess, is because he has the Twisted Faith talent that we were talking about before. I think this is the only thing that really forces you to go one way or another with how you play the Shadow Priest. If you use Twisted Faith, you're gonna have to make sure you get your dot up, well, one of them, before you do Mind Blast. But if you go the Void Plague build, which like a lot of people did do, then it really seems like it doesn't matter what you do. Put them up in any order, just get your dots up, fill your GCDs with Mind Spike, and you're going to parse pretty good. Not a whole lot to it. It does really suck how if you want a PvP, you get kind of clowned. You're going to have to ditch a bunch of talents that are awesome for you. Otherwise, you need to go with something that's suboptimal. Ugh, really not into that. But at least the high point is that nobody needs to worry about getting this crap ever again. I don't like it when you need to rely on your team to do kind of everything for you, and I'm happy that's not the way for Shadow Priest right now, and I don't think it's that way for any of the top caster DPS, which is really quite odd.